Mpirical provide compelling, interactive learning across a range of delivery options. Live on site, live online, or online anytime, we have a training course that is ideal for you. For a no-obligations chat about your training requirements, contact us at mpirical.com.
Like 4G LTE, policy and charging control in 5G is a very, very big area, to the point at which there is a separate 3GPP specification, TS 23.503, which purely focuses on policy and charging control within a 5G environment. Now, within this session, we're going to talk about some of the fundamentals behind policy and charging control. We'll start with a look at the general concepts. We'll then consider a bit of a comparison between 4G and 5G, because there are some terminology changes despite the fact that conceptually the two are very similar. And then finally, we'll consider how exactly policy and charging control can potentially be used to ultimately monetize the network. So fundamentally, policy and charging control gives the service provider very close control over the way in which data flows over its network. Now, that data flow is called a service data flow, and that would represent the flow of data associated with a particular service, like, for example, a voice call, instant messaging, or even some kind of streaming video. So fundamentally, we have all of these different flows of traffic on the network, and policy and charging control allows us to manipulate quality of service, ensure that that quality of service is appropriate, but also bill. And that's what we have on the diagram here. So first and foremost, we focus on correct resource usage. So when a subscriber requests network resources for a particular service, for example, we need to make sure that only that service is being used for those resources. We also, of course, need to make sure that the resource usage is actually authorized. Is the customer actually allowed to do this? Remember though, we're not just necessarily talking about a human customer using a specific service. It could be an automated piece of equipment. Finally, we need to bill for that particular service as appropriate. And by having that very granular control over that flow of data through the network, we know exactly which packets have been sent for that service, and we can bill for them. Now, a point to note about 5G, we hear about network slicing, we hear about multi-access edge control and other such initiatives. Remember that policy and charging control is about data flows. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about the data flowing over a network slice, or it doesn't matter if it's the data flow associated with a MEC service. At the end of the day, it's still a data flow. So we can apply policy and charging control in the same way, whether it's network slicing, MEC applications, cellular IoT, or whatever. Ultimately, the standards apply to all. Now, in terms of a comparison, of course, policy and charging control isn't a new thing. It was introduced a long time ago, even before LTE. Now, LTE was the first instance where we really saw policy and charging control come into effect. And there are a number of different concepts and terminology in LTE which you may already be familiar with. So just as a comparison, what do we have in 5G? Well, at the top, we've got this notion of an IP CAN session in LTE. In 5G, it's called a PDU session. We've got this notion of an access point name in LTE. Remember, that identifies the data network that we're actually connecting to. Well, in 5G, it's called a data network name. In LTE, we've got an IP CAN bearer. Now, the IP CAN bearer, this term is actually policy and charging control terminology. And if we look in the details, in LTE, this would be known as an EPS bearer, a default or a dedicated EPS bearer. Well, in 5G, the equivalent to that would be a quality of service flow. The policy and charging rules function in LTE, well, the equivalent network.
Need to know more? Why not visit our store, where you can choose from over 200 hours of video-based training. Alternatively, you can contact us to discuss any specific training requirements you may have.